I used to own a 1959 Lambretta, and I used to run with a group of other scooter riders here in New York City, and they were mostly English people. I actually love the English people. I think your sense of humor is really great. It's very dry, and your overall sense of sarcasm, which is my favorite kind of humor, is so spot on that I just absolutely love it. I do. So I'm a
We
big
are
fan
good
of
at
the
that.
English.
Yeah, we're very good at
Yeah,
sarcasm.
I know. I really like it. I really do.
Anyway, thanks very much for agreeing to do the interview.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
I've become aware of your work through Art to Life. I watched the interview with Susan Melrath when you were
Sure.
surrounded by all your paintings at the Anita Rogers Gallery. So I thought I'd just start off by saying, how did that go? And I guess it's been a really strange time since then, but how was the show?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose society kind of fell apart about maybe 7 months after that show closed.
Yeah.
So, it's odd to look back even a year ago to think different, how differently we lived our lives, and how this pandemic and the current sort of climate we're in here, especially in the United States, has really taken sort of a darker shade to our lives out here. The show itself was and remains, I think, probably the singular greatest thing I've done in my career in terms of the body of work that I was able to create for the exhibition, and the size of the exhibition, and the rather public nature of it. I mean, Anita Rogers Gallery is the largest gallery in Soho. So they have the opportunity to take advantage of that very large footprint and that very large space, to create such a large body of work for a singular exhibition was a really great thing for me. And I try to avoid things like saying that I'm proud of myself, or I don't want to put too many superlatives on my work, because I feel rather uncomfortable with my own paintings. But I feel like there was a lot for me to be proud of out of that exhibition. I took a lot away from it. It was very well received, and it sold well, and people seemed to share in my excitement of the work. So I was very grateful for that, certainly.
So I was wondering, as you're sitting surrounded by the works, do you have a feeling towards a favourite, or are you just quite glad that they are out of you and somewhere else almost?
Sitting around them in terms of what, being here at the studio while they're being worked on, or at the gallery, because they are two different things. Yeah. Certainly having them, like my studio space here in New York is very small, especially when you compare it to the gallery space that I ended up exhibiting the work in. So to see them in that context, to be able to get like an actual physical distance away from the work, really gave me a sense of accomplishment in a certain way, in terms of feeling like I had made some good decisions in the work that maybe I hadn't noticed when I was in a closer confinement with them. To see them all together certainly was something that was really kind of enthralling for me, because I think with an exhibition, and I think with your career in general, that there are certain things that you always want to be mindful of, and some of those things include I think that you want to have a variation in all of your paintings and works on paper. I think variety is a very good thing to have in your work, but variety with authorship. And what I mean by that is that there needs to be recognizable qualities in the work that you put out, where people can look at it and be certain that that work came from you, and that is a Robert Szot painting. But there also needs to be variety, because me personally, I bore very quickly, especially with my own work. And so if there isn't variety, and it's a rather one-note exhibition, it's sort of a one and done kind of a thing. And I try to avoid that as much as I possibly can. So seeing everything together, and seeing that variety, and seeing that authorship thread in that exhibition was certainly a satisfying thing.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to ask you about, actually, because the thing that really struck me was the variety, amazing variety in the different works. So you've got bits of torn, elements of torn paper, monoprint, collage, oil on linen. There's so much variety.
Right.
I was just thinking, when if you start with a monoprint and an etching, you know, so I was, you know, I love those.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I love them. And yeah, I was thinking any one of them would look really great on my living room wall, actually. But you've said that it's quite the hardest part of painting is the beginning of a painting, and I was wondering, is it easier if you start with a monoprint or an etching or something actually that you can physically put on a canvas or piece of paper before you start, or is it the same argument and the same process?
See, all of my paintings are oil on linen, so I don't do a lot. And I get this question a lot now that I've started to introduce works on paper into this kind of larger body of work that I do. So a lot of people end up asking me, are my paintings collage as well? Because my works on paper do tend to be a mixed media with collage elements on it. So all of my paintings are oil on linen. There's oil and charcoal on linen now, but there are no collage elements on that. So there is a direct correlation between how I start my paintings and how I work on my works on paper. And that is, it is essential for me to provide myself with a very basic framework to begin any work in earnest on anything that I do. And with my paintings, what I will always typically end up doing is that I will draw that framework out with just black oil paint, very thin lines, almost in kind of this Bryce Martin-esque sort of way. Just to give me something to hang my hat on, something to kind of bite into, because for me, a blank canvas is it's a very daunting thing for me to be staring at, because I work best when I'm solving problems of composition and solving problems of color. I'm not a great starter because, again, I think it's that boredom factor that comes in for me, where there isn't anything compelling or frustrating or exciting that's moving the painting forward. It's just this empty space that I have to fill. And that becomes a very complicated issue for me. I mean, certainly I want to move the work forward. I want to get this work going, but I end up sort of staring at a blank canvas for probably longer than I should, just because I just can't seem to, if there's nothing there for me to fight against, like I get a little confused, really. I mean, for lack of a better word. Now, with the works on paper, I've essentially solved that problem by starting out with an etching, with an old etching that I've made additions of, maybe some abandoned etchings that didn't print correctly. Then I'm able to, and you've got that built-in framework already, and it's a much easier starting place for me. Right. It's almost like, yeah, I mean, the plane's already in the air at that point, which is, it's just easier for my brain to kind of start solving those problems and picking that composition apart, as opposed to just, I've never started to work on paper without something on it, whether it be a monotype or an etching. I just can't imagine what, I think that would probably be just as frustrating as starting with a blank canvas, really.
So you've talked a lot about these arguments that are going on. When you look at your work when it's finished, do you know, in the gallery, for example, you know, at the show, do you remember each argument with each individual painting? How does it feel when you look at the work? Are you reminded of the arguments?
That's a great question, and that's a question that I have not been asked before. But that is a question I have a ready answer for. Yeah. I get a lot of people coming up to me, in particular at an exhibition, or if they're here at the studio. And one of the questions I always get is, do you like the work? Are you happy with the work? And really, as much as I want to be happy with the work, I cannot set aside that argument that I've had with it, that contentious relationship that I've had with the work, because it is something that is very sharp in my memory and is not something that I easily forget. Now, I mean, when I talk about arguments, it's not like I'm actually becoming physically angry at these works. I'm not like some, you know, temperamental thrash about type of artist, but they certainly are contentious, and that contention is, and I'm aware of this, probably through therapy more than anything. I know that contention and that argument is something that I'm having with myself. I know that these are all internalized things, and these are more personal issues than anything else. And it's so strange to me how how painting can make you confront those issues about who you are as a person and how you see yourself as a person. I have always personally had issues with self-confidence. I've always had issues with believing in my abilities to do something, and I think that that is a double-edged sword in the sense that, of course, like those feelings can be crushing and debilitating, and they could stop you from doing things that from taking risks that maybe you should take. But the other thing is that it's also something that compels me to take risks as well. It makes me want to do them to prove that little voice in my head incorrect. You know what I'm saying? So you end up doing things to spite this rather crippling kind of self-doubt that I'm sure a lot of artists have. I mean, of course, right?
That will
These
resonate
are,
with a lot of artists.
yeah, these are things that I mean, you're in a studio by yourself, you're working alone. It's really down to you whether you succeed or whether you fail. You can try to blame your failures on whatever you want to blame them on, but the reality is that they always come home. They're always yours alone to bear. And so, like, of course you're going to feel doubtful in what you're doing, especially if you're creating things like paintings. I mean, these are all incredibly personal ventures that you're on, and it repeats itself every time for every piece that you make. So it's just going to hammer at that self-confidence.
Do you remember any particular painting that you think of a specific argument, or is it more that general feeling?
Oh, yeah, I think it's a generalized feeling of, why am I still lost? And why do I still have questions about these things? After 20 years of being in New York City as an artist, it's like, why am I still trying to answer these same questions over and over again?
Do you think you'll
And I
always
think
be trying to
well,
answer them?
yeah, of course, because you know what, my work is about me largely, right? Like I don't want there to be any separation between myself and my work. I really want my work to be there to be a very direct association with who I am or who I perceive myself to be. And so, since my paintings are about me and I'm changing constantly, I think those questions are always going to be changing, even if they change to a very small degree. It's enough to effectively conceal like whatever answer there is. You know what I mean? Like it's even if it's a very small change, it becomes a brand new question over and over again. And when I say question, I don't mean like there's a legitimate like who are you question mark out there. It's just this feeling of searching, always searching, constantly. And I don't think, and I don't want there to be an answer either. I would hate to figure all of this out because I think I would get bored with it again. I think that boredom would kick in if I ever really truly was able to kind of conceive of what it was I was after. I think I would move on from it. And I don't want to do that, really.
Do you think a lot of artists suffer from boredom, are easily bored as well?
That's a good question. And I wonder if that boredom doesn't manifest itself into good editing. And what I mean by that is my favorite painters are the best editors in the world. And they edit their work down to the nubs, just down to like the quick. And I wonder if boredom isn't something that compels them to do that. A lot of times I'll look at a painting that I think is finished, and if I have the opportunity to go back into it, I take that opportunity. And maybe boredom isn't the right word. Maybe I don't know. You're always fighting with the desire to want to move on to the next project, I think.
Like a quest.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Like you want to get everything right, but then again, like you want to kind of move the ball down the road.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
That's very conflicting, right? It is.
It is.
And it's not something that I think about. I only think about it when I'm doing like an interview like this, and if I look kind of spacey and I stop talking for a minute, like it's really me kind of considering these things. I love to work. I love to be working all the time.
I saw that you work 8 to 10 hours a day with no vacation, no break, I think you said.
I haven't.
That's a lot of work.
You know what's funny about me is I love being in New York City, and I love being in the studio and going on vacation. It's, I mean, God bless my girlfriend. The poor thing hasn't had a vacation in 9 years. It's just one of these things where I feel like I've been fortunate enough to garner an audience for what I'm doing. I've certainly been fortunate enough to be allowed to make a living doing what I'm doing. And I don't want to, it's not that I feel like I would be taking advantage of that good fortune by taking a break or going on vacation. I think I'm just so in love with it that it's hard for me to want to be anywhere else. So
is the paint, so most people would take a break to replenish, but is the work itself, does that replenish you? Is that what replenishes you, getting in the studio, or do you need something else a bit, you know, to...
Catherine, it does more than replenish me. It gives meaning to my life. It makes me feel like I have a purpose. And that is an endless well of energy for me. If I feel like I'm actually doing something meaningful, it's something important, there's nothing quite like not feeling like you're wasting your time to keep yourself motivated. You know, that's a great feeling. And that's unfortunately a feeling a lot of people never get around to experiencing, I think. And that's a shame. And I don't know what, I mean, I know people have circumstances in their lives, and being an individual and doing what you want to do with your life can end up at the very bottom of your priority list because of the circumstances that you're in. But I just want to encourage people to find little ways to make that happen for yourself, because it does bring such a tremendous amount of joy into your life, to feel like you have purpose and to feel like you're doing something worth your time. And that could be anything. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's limited to just being in a studio, putting paint on a canvas. Just really find something small to wrap your life around and nurture that small thing as much as you possibly can, because I have benefited from it endlessly. I mean, it's been an uphill battle. I mean, I won't lie to you. Like, it hasn't been an easy road. And certainly being someone that is filled with such uh, self-doubt a lot of the times, like, I still second guess myself. I still wonder why, like, I haven't figured all of this stuff out, and is it worth it, and what does it mean? And but I think in the end, the overall feeling I get is one that I've spent my time wisely, because I've spent my time doing what I wanted to do.
That sounds like quite an existential thing.
I'm quite an existentialist.
How, so we've just had lockdown, and I don't know what the situation is still in New York, but has that time affected your work and the palette that you use, or the way you paint? Has it?
I got to be honest, like, my life hasn't really changed that much. I mean, I'm here in the studio by myself, so isolation and not being social is not something I'm unfamiliar with.
Training, isn't it, for that? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only real change is that I had to walk to the studio from my apartment. It's about a 2-mile walk each way, and I do it. Yeah, I'm getting quite fit. Yeah. So so the subways were out of the equation. So that's really been the biggest change, is yeah, I walk a lot now.
Yeah. Okay. So going back a little bit,
Yeah.
you're from Texas, right?
Right. Yes, I'm from Houston. Yeah.
Houston. And you studied journalism to start with, and I think I've seen that you liked writers like Bukowski and Hunter Thompson, and
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what was the appeal? I'm curious, because they're quite edgy, aren't they, those writers?
And so I think I'm attracted to those people who I at least conceive of that have very little separation between themselves and the work that they produce. And I think that was my attraction toward those writers, and toward people like Egon Schiele and Francis Bacon. I'm an incredible admirer of Francis Bacon's work. Again, probably not the nicest person on the planet, a hard drinker, certainly a rather rough person to get along with. But there is an honesty in his work too that I'm really desperately attracted to, I think. and my work and his work and the work of Chile and the work of like it's all chalk and cheese. Like there's really very little physical or conceptual or aesthetic connection that you can make between myself and any of these people. But I want the approach to be the same. I
Yeah.
want my work to feel as honest as I could get it to feel.
So it's the authenticity and the connection with you.
I think that's it exactly. Yeah.
Totally connected with you.
Yeah.
So I was interested that you said that you were thinking of being a writer to start with, and now you're an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Are you pleased you made that choice? I'm guessing you are, but I mean, is there something, is there anything you, obviously writers can go into, on the face of it, a lot more detail. They can have dialogue, they can have all kinds of characters coming in.
Right.
So you've got their own little universe, haven't they, to play with?
Well, I think the path that I was on in terms of being a writer was more of a journalist, was more of a reporter, which in hindsight, I think would have been an interesting job. But I think it would have involved a little too much outside time for me. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I really would have had to have fundamentally changed who I am as a person, which, I mean, look, I mean, I'm able to talk to people. I'm able to socialize and go out and shake hands and make sense when I speak to people. But I personally view myself as a very shy person. Not in terms of like this. I don't feel like I have an anxiety when I go out into public, but my preference is to be working alone. And so I don't think I would have done well as a journalist, because you really got to get out there and beat the street and be aggressive with people and ask aggressive questions and things like that. And I'm not terribly comfortable. It's not confrontation, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, you really have to kind of dig into people's lives. And I would rather dig into my own life, really.
Yeah.
I think there are enough dark corners in my own life that I find interesting. I don't need to be kicking up dust in lives of strangers. I respect journalism. Obviously, it's the backbone of our country and our democracy here in this country. But I don't think I have the bollocks for it, I think you would say out there in England, right? Is that right?
Maybe. Maybe a more confessional, like a confessional writer. I don't know.
Yeah. But I feel like I'm with painting, I get kind of the best of both worlds, right? I get to spend these times by myself, and I get to confess everything,
well, that's
through abstraction,
going with that really is like, it can painting, do you find painting can express everything you want to say that's in you, that you want to come out?
I think it does an even greater thing. I think it takes your life and connects it to the lives of people that you don't know. And what I mean by that is the genesis of all of this, of painting and of painting abstract paintings, for me was, growing up, I would stand in front of a de Kooning painting, and clearly never having met de Kooning, I would feel like I knew the person that made this work. I would feel like there were aspects of that painting that gave hints of who he was during his lifetime. And I was so enchanted by having that personal connection with somebody that I'd never met, through this rather esoteric, like very strange array of colors and compositions, like just something I've never really been confronted with. But yet I was able to, in my mind anyway, I was able to pull something out of that I really wouldn't have known had I not seen the painting in person. And so feeling that way, and whether or not that connection was real, and whether or not my assumptions about who de Kooning was as a person were correct or accurate, I felt a very deep connection with the person that made that work. And I felt it gave up a lot of his little personal secrets. And then I thought, if he's able to do that, if he's able to communicate that effectively through painting, that it's something that I want to try myself. And so the act of making a painting for me isn't only this cathartic kind of release of um, my personality and my ideas and my secrets and my passions and things like that, but it's also a real opportunity for me to try to connect those things up and to link those things up with other people that I probably don't know or possibly will never meet. And I just love that painting can transcend distance and time in that manner. And excuse me, I just wanted to be a part of that. I just wanted to see if I could do it, to see if I could talk in that language.
So that makes me interested to know, in 100 years' time, somebody standing in front of one of your paintings, what part of you are you hoping they are going to connect with?
Well, I'll probably still be alive in 100 years, I would think. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to try to really
eat all your vegetables and
yeah,
cross the
eat a
road.
lot of greens. Yeah, I mean, if a turtle can live 200 years, I could do 140,
Okay, let's
right?
do
That's not
300
that hard.
years.
um I think the main thing I really want people to know, and the thing I want them to get out of my work, if we're talking about like what I want them to figure out about me when they're looking at a painting, I, I really want them to know that it's something that I was very deliberate in doing. I want the painting to speak in a language that feels like there was a lot of thought and effort put into it. And I want people to know also that I think the important thing for me is just to understand that these were all very personal ventures I put myself on, and that my wow, boy, Catherine, way to put me on the spot here. I mean, that's the big chestnut, isn't it? That's a really big question. I just want I want these paintings to unfold over time for people, and I want them to form a very personal relationship with all of them, just as I have done. And although my relationship with them can be a bit contentious, I want them to make a connection with the work that will lead directly back to what my life was like in New York City in 2020. Because I'm so excited to be here right now,
Hmm.
to be in this place, that I want them to feel that. I want them to know that despite the uncertainty and despite the inconsistencies of living in New York City and the inconsistencies of the time that we are occupying at this moment, that it was nothing but a pleasure to be here working on these things and to be putting them out into the world. And that's what I want to get across. I think that my life is really great. It's really great, and I'm so pleased. I really am. And there, I mean, it's funny to be saying that because again, it's easy to get down and oh, I don't have this, or I'm not getting what I want out of the world, or whatever. I just feel like the last 20 years here in New York it's just been an honor to be able to do it, and that's what I want to get that across.
So,
Am getting a little emotional, I guess, about it? I don't know.
you've got a very strong sense of place. I've got that about New York. How,
Mm.
I mean, it seems a very bold move to me to move from Texas to New York. I think you said in 2001, is that right? Is that
Yeah, I got here in the summer of 2001.
before 9/11?
Yeah, about
Yeah,
6 weeks before September
yeah.
11th. Yeah.
So an amazing time to get there.
Yeah,
Did,
yeah, incredible.
so presumably you chose New York for some particular reasons, that you wanted to be part of the history there and
Yeah. Yeah.
that scene?
I came here because everybody that I've ever really admired as a painter spent their formative years here. And
Right.
I wanted to have those experiences like they had. I wanted to be on the same street. I wanted to be looking through the same windows. I wanted to be showing at the same galleries, because I feel like a lot of that great work that came out of New York was so tied into being here in the city, and that work was being informed by the city itself, that I wanted a part of that action as well. And I thought, well, maybe I can move to New York and incorporate whatever that kind of magical New York dust that they incorporated into their work. I'd like to see what that does to me and to my work. And it's funny because as much as I thought New York was going to inform my work, I mean, at a certain point that I decided I was going to start informing New York City. You know what I'm saying? That I would be adding back into the fabric of the art world of New York, that fabric that I've taken so much from. I think at some point I decided to flip that and say, listen, now it's time that I start adding back my own voice into, you know, all of these other illustrious voices that I've heard for so many years.
So where do you get, what are your main inspirations in the city? Are there particular galleries you like going back to again and again, or people that have that feed you artistically in New York?
I know it's a very cliched thing to talk about the energy of New York City, like this sort of ambiguous electricity that runs through the air out here. But I think there is something to be said about that. I think the fact that you're always on your feet in New York City, it has something to do with that. I think the fact that you're able to walk and travel the city freely on your own two legs, I think you end up taking in so much of what's going on out here. All the little things, they all conglomerate into like this big wave of noise and energy that you're constantly surrounded by. And I know that that's true because every time I leave New York, it's like the volume gets turned down by 100, and it's almost confusing and uncomfortable for me because I'm like, what is going on? Like, I've been inside of all of this for so long that if I don't feel like that electricity kind of coursing through my body at all times, it really feels like something got shut off.
So where's your stillness in that?
I think it's right after I finish a painting, to be honest with you. I think it's probably the 10 or 15 minutes. I finish a lot of my work at night, and it's when I go to bed and I can't sleep because I'm just so happy to be done with that thing. You know what I mean? I'm just so grateful and happy that I'd come to some reasonable conclusion on a painting that it's like a kid going to bed on Christmas Eve. I cannot sleep. But that's the quiet time I have. It's like everything kind of gets squeezed into a very small place inside of you, and then finally it gets released. But that release is just so there's just so much energy that I can't relax. I can't go to bed. But it's good. Like I feel good. Those are the moments I feel really good in. So I think that's my quiet time. I also have a record player where I listen to like a lot of Smiths and
Yeah.
Edith Piaf, and I'll probably have a drink. You know, those are always nice.
Edith
Yeah.
Piaf. Excellent. That's different, isn't it?
I go through a lot of garbage out here in New York, and a lot of people throw their records away. And so, yeah, somehow Edith Piaf found its way onto my record player. And I was like, wow, this is terrific.
I didn't see that coming. Yeah, I was going to ask you actually, what music do you like listening to music while you paint, or do you like stillness and quiet?
You know what's? Let me tell you a little personal story. I don't know how exciting this will be for you, but when I was a kid growing up, my parents liked to play bridge, which is a card game. I don't know if they have that in England. I think
yeah.
They like to play bridge with the neighbors. And my bedroom was upstairs in this very little house in the suburbs of Houston, and they would play downstairs in the kitchen. And I would be laying in bed with the lights off, going to sleep, and I would hear them downstairs laughing and having a good time and telling stories. And I was so comforted by the fact that there were other people in the house that were so excited to be together. And it sounded like they were having a genuinely good time. And I didn't have to be down there experiencing the good time. Just hearing it was enough for me. And the reason I'm telling you this story is now because a lot of what I listen to when I paint is I listen to a lot of old um, radio broadcasts from like the 30s and 40s, old serials, old, cop dramas, old detective stories. And so I always have a dialogue going on inside of my head. Like there's literally conversation on my headphones all the time. And it's not something I'm necessarily paying attention to. It's a background voice that I don't know if it makes me feel less alone, if it makes me feel like there are people somewhere telling a story about something. I don't know if it's directly tied into those times when I was a kid listening to my parents play cards downstairs. But I do find that there is something very evening about it for me. Like it really just sort of levels everything out for me. And I'm able to kind of turn that part of my brain off that allows me to just sort of work.
Have you come across Portuguese fado music?
I have not, but you've aroused my interest.
Try it.
Will you email me some suggestions? And maybe,
I will.
okay.
I don't know it very well, but I just think that you might, if you want a break from Edith Piaf, then that's your.
Who wants a break from Edith Piaf? Who would ever want to take a break from that?
You won't want to take a break, but what of the Texan boy is there left in the New York artist?
Well, I do say sir. I say sir and ma'am a lot. I still do. I still hold the door open for any woman that's standing in front of one. Thank you to my mother, who would stand in front of a door with her arms crossed until somebody opened it for her. And God bless her. Like, absolutely, she should have done that. And I still give my seat up on the subway. And so there's still a lot of that kind of Southern charm that I like to carry around with me. And if I get drunk or if I get tired, my Texas accent still does come out. And I say things like, hell, I don't know, and like, and every time I'm back in Texas, like I do feel very comfortable. I feel very at home.
Yeah. So talking of which, my partner's a Somerset man. He loves his cider, and he wanted me to ask you. He said you must ask about barbecue. So, do you like barbecue?
Of course, I like barbecue.
I have barbecue-related questions for you from him.
Sure. Now in Texas, barbecue, the main thing that they barbecue down in Texas is something called brisket, right?
Yeah, he said brisket.
And
yeah.
They're very serious about their brisket down there. And then, so if you're ever in Texas, in Austin in particular, which is the capital of Texas, there are barbecue joints out there that will blow your hair back. I mean, the brisket is absolutely stunning. I mean, and they take days to cook that stuff. They cook it at such low temperatures out there.
Low and slow.
It really is unbelievable. And have something called burnt ends. Burnt ends it's a rare treat down there in Texas to have the burnt ends. They're only saved for the barbecuer himself, the chef himself or herself. But if you can get a hold of some burnt ends, in particular, what they like to do you know what Fritos are? You ever heard of Fritos? It's a corn chip. Yeah, it's a corn chip, right? Like it's a real greasy, kind of salty corn chip. And they take a bag of Fritos and they empty about half of that bag out. And then they put white rice, beans, burnt ends, and barbecue sauce all into this half full bag of Fritos. And then they give you a plastic fork and sell you the bag. And then you go out and eat it in the parking lot with, a 24-ounce cruiser in your hand. And it's that's a good day. That makes for a good day out.
I will tell John, he'll be making that. I'll at the end, I'll show you our barbecue setup here.
Please, so. We call them Frito pies out there, but they have to be made in a bag. I'll send you a bag of Fritos so you could have the authentic experience. Right?
Great.
Like I am a big fan of seeing the graft that someone has put into a piece of work. I want to see the mistakes and the frustration and the editing, and I want to see them in the studio. That's what I really want. And unfortunately, I'm just not seeing a whole lot of that coming out of either Europe or America. And I don't know if that is just me being maybe overly critical. I don't know. But a lot of the work that I see in New York and it's high profile galleries, it just doesn't speak to me like um, it doesn't speak of work that has really been suffered over and pondered and corrected and then, dismantled and then put, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really like that kind of work more than anything.
Do you think painting is a little bit out of fashion, even just the actual physical act and going,
Oh,
as things go
yeah,
deeper?
I think it's been out of fashion for a long time.
Yeah.
But the great thing is that I think there will always be um, a core of people that cannot do without it, that have to be around it, that have to see it. It'll never die out completely, even in the face of technology, even in the face of an easier way to get this done. There will always be this unshakable core of people that are absolutely tied into the act of painting in the studio. To me, anyway, it speaks to such a, a big part of who we are as human beings. It's such a great expression, and it's such a great way for an individual to mark their time out and to express themselves and say, like, this is what was going on when I was here. That I don't think that will ever die out.
I mean,
It's
you
like
pick
Edith
up,
Piaf. Edith Piaf will live forever, and painting will live forever. So,
I think, like you say, it's literally making that desire to make your mark, isn't it? I mean, it was there with the cavemen,
right.
literally,
Yeah.
and I just
Yeah. And what was their motivation? I mean, that's what I'm talking about.
I
It's like the
think,
same thing
hang
that
on,
motivated them to do that, to express themselves. And I mean,
to be seen, isn't it? Don't you think? To be seen and to last a bit,
I
last
don't, I
beyond.
don't know if it's about cementing legacy. I just think that there's this very instinctual desire to want, even if you're marking time for yourself, even if it's just for you to have. I think it's this great instinctual drive that we all share to say, listen, I mean, this is something that came out of me. This is something I made. And and the fact that it is something that you made and it is so personal to you, that I think there's enough satisfaction just to hold it for yourself, even. And if it goes out into the world and it makes a connection with strangers and it becomes important to other people, like, that's a beautiful thing, and it's wonderful, but it's not the necessary part of this. The necessary part of this is that these things get made. You cannot make work with an expectation that it's going to be seen by people or important to people.
Mm.
You fundamentally, you have to make it for yourself. Like, I think that's very, very important. The desire and the drive should be, I cannot help but make this. I cannot help but create these things.
How do you think galleries and social media, where it can get out to so many people,
Mm.
how is it possible to not be too mindful of all of that? Is it important
That's
to be mindful of not too mindful of all of that going on in the
I,
background, so in case it affects what you do?
well, that's the thing, is that you cannot allow it to creep into your decision making processes. It becomes disingenuous, I think, when you start thinking about your audience and will they like this or how will they respond to this. I think you're losing a lot of your honesty when you're doing that, and it becomes almost gimmickry. It becomes almost this kind of little game that you're playing with the people that are going to be viewing your work, and I think that lessens it as an art form. I think it dilutes it. um, in the time that we're in now, with social media, with all of this access that people have, it is difficult not to think of these things in terms of how your audience is going to digest it. It becomes content for them. But you have to understand that it's not, you're missing out on making that personal connection with someone. You're missing out on surprising somebody when you're considering how strangers are going to react to your work. And that's a shame. And you should try to avoid that as much as possible. I know that that's hard. I mean, I have a lot of followers on Instagram, and I never thought I would use social media in any respect of my life, because I feel like it's kind of a time sink. But there is a value to having so many eyes on what you're doing and sort of tied into your life, like there is value there. But at some point you have to cut it off and say, I have to make these things for myself and not consider the stranger that's going to click like on Instagram.
Do you find that difficult, or do you find that quite easy?
I think it's easy for me because the first 10 or 8 or 10 years of working in New York, I didn't have an audience. Like I was just doing it for myself. I'm grateful that people came around. It's an unusual thing to have an audience for the work that you're doing, simply because I never expected one. And so those 8 or 10 years that I was working just to work, it really cemented that mindset for me to where there's not a consideration of, oh, you know what, these people don't like this particular color, or I never sell paintings that are overly purple or have a lot of paint. It just doesn't work that way for me. Look, I'm not saying that those things don't crop up in my mind, but I dismiss them as folly almost immediately now.
So you think it might be helpful to put blinkers on, not look too at it while you develop your own voice?
100%. Because there's nothing more interesting than your own voice, right? Really, there's nothing more interesting to me than the individual. Like, I love individuals. I love being surprised by their individuality. I'm so turned off by people that just do stuff to market it or do stuff to provide content to people they don't even know. Like, it's really fatuous, and again, it dilutes the very thing that I'm trying to do and the very thing that you're trying to do. And I encourage people to avoid that at all costs. It's so hard though, man. It is, because everybody wants to be popular in high school, right? Like they all want, who doesn't want that, you know? But you're missing out on the greater reward, which is, I'm an individual. This work has gone out into the world as the work of an individual. What do they say? A camel is a horse drawn by committee, right? Like you don't want to confuse your message. You just don't. And man, you get too many people in that message and it's going to just look like garbage. And that's not good. So, and I don't mean to insult my audience either. Like, let me be clear. I'm not insulting my audience. Listen, if somebody takes 5 minutes to look at one of my paintings, I'm extremely grateful for that. I really am. But it's my business. You know what I'm saying? This is my deal. This is my time.
I think everybody who wants to make art, who, you know, is authentic about it, is trying to find their own voice, you know, of actually, who am I and what have I got to say?
Right.
So how, have you got any tips for the best way to do that? Maybe apart from working 8 to 10 hours a day and just putting in the hours and.
That's my tip though, Catherine, to be honest with you. It's like, well, you know, I think you have to start these things kind of slowly, right? And I think this is a consequence of the time we're living in now, which is that people need an immediacy. They need to get things done and get them out there and get it seen and get noticed for it. And that's not a good way of going about it. You're going to be disappointed more often than not by rushing these things. And so again, I really feel like it's about finding that one small thing that you are so passionate about, that little ember that just burns so deeply inside of you, and really wrapping everything and every decision you make around that as much as you can. Because again, it's not that I'm ignorant of people's circumstances. They have, you know, not everybody could sit in a studio all day long like I do. I mean, I'm just, you know, I don't have other trappings in my life that prevent me from doing that. But I'm saying start slowly, manage your expectations, don't frustrate yourself, and like you wanted me not to say, just try to dedicate as much time to it as you possibly can. And it is a difficult thing to dive that deeply into your own personality, into your own psyche, into your brain. And you will find it to be exhilarating and terrifying and rewarding all at the same time. It is not an easy road. I think it brings such a focus into your own life of purpose and of that individual spirit that I feel like is missing a little too much in today's society. And to get a little piece of that back, and to like really feel like you were able to kind of reawaken your individualistic spirit. It's so great. It's so great, and it'll make you want to create more. It really will. It'll bring everything into focus and make your ideas and your work and whatever it is you're producing that much better.
Right. So I thought I'd end with some what I call shorts. So kind of the idea was that they were going to be one-word answers, but they don't have to be. Okay.
I'm not good with one-word answers, if you can't tell.
No, I said that just to make sure that you felt comfortable.
Well, I'll try. I'll do my best.
Make them as many words as you want. So here we go.
Oh. All right.
We've had the barbecue questions anyway.
Right. So those have been satisfied. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I will be passing that on. So favorite color. What's your favorite color?
I like black. I do. I like black and I like dark gray a lot. I like it because it's got there's such great contrast. You could just mix it in just even a little bit, and it really just comes through so beautifully.
I'm really excited you said that, because I love gray, all of the different grays. And the thing is, without gray, none of the other colors look so great.
It's really true. It's really true. Payne's Gray Violet by Williamsburg, the paint company Williamsburg.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, I was very excited.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Sure. Yeah.
I waited ages for the Montserrat Orange. And
I know. I was going to say, I know that's Montserrat Orange. I recognize it. It's very small on my screen, but I recognize it.
So excited.
Payne's Gray Violet with just a just a very little bit of white in it makes this grayish purple color that I'm obsessed with.
Right, I'm going to try that.
Yeah, you should. It's really great.
Is that the Williamsburg Payne's Gray though?
Yeah, Williamsburg Payne's Gray Violet.
Oh, it's all one. Right, okay, so that's another long wait then when I order that.
Yeah, sorry about that, but yeah.
To order the ones that take extra time to order a new batch on. So
it's worth the wait. It's great color.
Okay,
that's great.
Okay, so what's more important to you, color, line, or design? If you had to pick one.
Gosh, I think line probably, because I think with my paintings in particular, it's the lines that delineate the color fields and kind of pieces everything together. And like, there's nothing quite as satisfying as that little surprise line that's maybe buried under some paint, but you could still kind of see it. So I'm gonna go with that. I do like that a lot.
I love that, because I noticed in a lot of your work there are there's bits where you've covered up almost completely, and then I think I can't remember its name, it looked like kind of a mist, like the landscape looks like on a misty morning. Yeah. You can just see things coming through. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Basquiat said something really interesting. I read an interview where they asked him why he crossed out words on his canvas. So like if you see some of his work, he'll write a word and then he'll deliberately like put a line through it or put an X through it. And he said he felt like when he did that people took more time to read what the word was. And so I kind of look at the way that I work in a very similar way, where the destruction of like more obvious things, but kind of leaving like little hints of them. It almost becomes this kind of mystery for people, and it's sort of a mystery for myself as well.
Is that like your titles, where you said that they're like little codes, and you're hoping that people might some point decode them?
Yeah, I think that the titles that's more of a long game mystery, that if people are that interested, they can kind of travel down that path a little bit. But I think the more immediate kind of unfolding of that story lies within those little details of shrouding things and covering them up and maybe bringing them back even just a little bit.
So is that reflective of your personality?
Look, I think at the end of the day, I'm a Texan, right? I talk too much. I overshare. I really do. I overshare, not with everybody though, but like if you sit down with me and maybe there's some bourbon involved, like I overshare too much. And I think maybe my paintings are who I would rather be in those times, which is maybe a little bit more mysterious and a little bit less mouthy.
Well, there are some mysterious bits, aren't there? But there's some quite you know,
Yeah, right. And I, yeah,
bold bits in there that are, you know,
so,
you
yeah,
can't mistake
maybe,
the colours.
I mean, maybe my paintings are an exact duplication of who I am as a person, because sometimes I'm very quiet and I'm the dark little cloud in the room that doesn't say anything. And then there are other times that, I think right around drink number 4, it becomes an almost unbearable exercise in like self-revelation to strangers that I mean,
Always
I
drink
don't think
number 4,
I would
that's
want
too
to hear.
far, isn't it? We learned that long ago. Yeah. Sometimes drink number 3, actually.
Yeah, it's just like it all just kind of comes pouring out, and people are like, "What? Like, really? What is wrong with you?"
Yes. Why aren't you in your studio? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
What?
when you're not working oil and charcoal on linen,
Mhm.
what's your favorite medium? What do you like
Uh,
working in
I,
best?
these works on paper were and are still a relatively new direction for me. I just started doing it maybe 3 years ago when my friend, this artist here in New York, Lewis, uh, introduced me to monotyping, and I didn't go to art school, so I didn't know what monotyping was, and so he took me out to the Salmagundi Club here in New York, and they had a monotyping party, which
Yeah.
means that you can come in and use their etching press. And I went out there and I fell in love with monotyping. The process is really great. The use of this big machine with these giant rollers on it's really exciting.
I want to
So
come to New York that you can have a monotyping party.
I have an etching press here at the studio. I'm staring at it right now. And come to New York and we'll have a monotyping party here at the studio. Yeah, for
That
sure.
sounds great. Wow. They
And
don't
so
have those in Somerset, I don't think.
I'm sure you can find an etching press somewhere out there.
I mean, a monotype party, but we'll have to start.
Oh yeah. I don't
Yeah.
think anybody's having a party to just draw a line under it. There are no more parties at
Have to be a
all.
socially distanced party at the moment.
Right, right,
With
right.
only 6 people. Yeah. So is there
So
oh yeah,
I
yeah.
really love working on works on paper. I really do. I love the crayons and collage, and it's great. It's great fun for
I
me.
love that. I
Oh,
love those. Yeah, yeah.
thanks.
So is there anything you haven't tried yet artistically that you'd like to, like sculpture, encaustic, wire, anything, ceramics, or
Hmm.
are you just a painter through and through?
I was always such a narrow visioned artist. Like people would ask me what it was I did. I said I do oil on linen, and that was it. And then work on paper came into play, which then brought charcoal into my paintings. And so I've stopped ruling out anything at this point, just because the etching press and working on paper has just expanded who I am as an artist by so much that if I have time, I'd be very willing to explore any of those options that you mentioned. Sculpture might be interesting, like bronze. Like I do like bronze sculpture a lot, but I just don't know what it would be like to work at a foundry. But that might be very exciting too. But the problem is, Catherine, is I'm very hands-on with everything. And so once you start getting into like boiling metal and pouring it into something, like I'm probably going to burn my face off doing it. But it's just because I want to get in there and do it. I
Yeah,
think the
can't
next
get
thing
in.
I
Yeah.
want to do is stone lithography. I want to try that out because it is such a complicated old process that I'm fascinated by it. So I'd like to maybe try to do like a stone litho, but that's a complicated thing.
Okay. So what's your favorite painting tool?
Uh, I I I have a paintbrush that doesn't have any bristles on it anymore.
So it's a
It's
stick.
just a metal. What is it? A metal? What are they called? Finials, I think. The little metal bits on a
Okay, yeah.
paintbrush.
Like a stub, is it?
Yeah, and I've worn the metal down smooth because what I do with it is that I actually dig into oil paint with that edge is almost like a drawing tool. I mean, not like a debuffet kind of a thing where I'm drawing figures in there, but again, it's more the line, and it's just a different way for me to make a line. And I've had that. I mean, that thing's a mess. So I would probably default to that just because I've had it and used it for so many years. Thinking about turning it into a necklace and just wearing it, just so I'm never without it. But
Canvas, panel, or paper?
Linen for sure.
Linen. Big or
Yeah.
small?
See, you're opening up this sort of Pandora's box of another problem that I see with contemporary painting, which is the concentration on size and the emphasis on physical size of a painting. I think a lot of artists that I've seen, a lot of contemporary artists, really lean on the fact that a large canvas is an impactful canvas just because of the size. And so therefore you can kind of slag off the process and not be, you know, as intense in the working process of the painting, because the size itself offers this kind of compelling thing for people to look at. And listen, I'm not dissing that. I mean, size is great, but it shouldn't be a substitute for actual work. And I see a lot of that. So when you ask big or small, I would say a bit of both, because again, I think it's the importance of being having variety in your work, not only in what they look like, but being able to be impactful at a very small size and also at a very large one. But I am always fascinated to hear people's read on my work.
I think one of them, is it Zither? Zither. There's like, I remember that looked a little bit like an iceberg with things fall, something.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah.
Falling into it, I think.
Yeah. The things they've pulled out of my paintings, I would never. That's some real imagination right there, you know. But that's, you know, I like to hear those things.
I think your mind just works like, I think a lot of people's minds work like that. You're always wanting to try and make a face or make something real.
Right. Yeah, yeah. It's just, there's something comforting about it, I guess, as opposed to just letting the visual kind of take over, you know.
Yeah. Right. This is another food related question.
All right.
Barbecue or bagels?
Oh man.
I know this is a tough one.
Thing is like my girlfriend is such a health food person. She's a Reiki practitioner here in New York, so she's all into like the holistic medicines, and she hasn't let me eat a bagel in like 9 years.
So forget about that. You're allowed bagels. Yeah.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
I think I would go with the bagel then. I think maybe like an everything bagel. Yeah. Don't tell her. Don't tell her this.
What filling would you go for then?
You know what? I'm a toasted everything bagel with butter. I'm a butter guy.
Oh,
I'm a butter guy. Yeah. I'm not a cream. I mean, I like cream cheese, and most people out here are like lox and I'm a butter guy. I don't know why, but like a nice toasted everything bagel. Oh, yeah.
It's been proven that butter's good for you again now, isn't it? So
I hadn't heard that, but I'm thrilled that you said it. That's great.
Maybe the UK has got there first with that one. That, yeah.
When can I start smoking again? Is that come around or no?
You're gonna have to stick to the butter. Yeah.
All right, a step at a time. That's okay.
Butter and bagels, that's official. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna plant my flag there.
If you weren't an artist, what would you be?
I would probably be like a forest ranger, because I think I really, I mean, despite living in New York City, like I love being outside in nature. I love animals. I have a real deep affection for animals. I don't know why. Like animals, babies, and old people. I'm really sentimental toward those three things. And also, I think I would enjoy the solitude of being out in some forest somewhere, you know, some great national park. Like I was in Yosemite a few years ago for the first time, and I just loved it out there. I went to Wyoming. I was in Sheridan, Wyoming, like in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, wow, it's really nice out here. I really enjoy it. But then I immediately wanted to get back to New York. You know, again, it's that kind of absence of electricity that I thought, oh, I can't help but feel like something's missing.
How would it feel if you, say, had to go on a trip to Mars and you couldn't get hold of that electricity for months and months or years? Do you think?
Well, I can come home from Mars, though. I can come home. You know what? I often ask it's funny because I ask people, I say, if you were on the moon, if you went to the moon and you looked back at the Earth, like, what do you think would happen to you? And like, I think I would die. I think I would have a heart attack.
Me too.
Yeah.
I've always said that. Yeah.
I don't think I could survive out. It would be so freaky, right? Like, I think I would have a heart attack. So if I went to Mars,
Yeah, you might not get there on the basis of that.
yeah, well, let's say I make it, right? Okay, so I made it and I'm on Mars. Okay. Wow, I don't know, because I wonder, like, is it one of those things like when you finish a painting, you're like, oh, I'm really glad to have finished that painting, so let's move on to the next thing. Would it be the same? Like, oh, okay, I made it to Mars. What now? You know,
I guess
like,
I think you could have your painting stuff.
oh,
So,
I could work on Mars. Like,
yeah,
I have a studio on
yeah,
Mars.
I'm
Yeah,
50 on you.
I would do
I'm
that.
thinking
Yeah,
that you're
I
going to
would
be
do
like,
that.
probably known as your red phase, don't you?
Yeah, right.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
your blue
sure.
phase because you're dreaming
It's,
about home. Yeah.
it's possible. Just, I think, I think that just the very conception of being that far away from Earth, I literally don't think I would make it. I think I would die. I think I would have a heart attack. But if I survived and had a studio there with, I don't know, cigarettes and bagels or whatever, like, yeah, I could make that happen. I
And
could do
butter.
that. Yeah, I can make that.
Butter.
Can make that. Yeah, of course. Please, NASA, send the butter shipment.
So, a small question to end with, really. What do you think
Sure.
the difference is between great art and good art? It's not really that small.
Well, no, but I think if I were to answer it quickly, I would say it's the editing, isn't it? It's the not being satisfied with the initial result of anything, and being able to sacrifice anything that, you know, if you could clearly see deliberate movement and sacrifice and dissatisfaction and correction in a painting, I think you make it from an acceptable painting to a good painting. And whenever I see an artist do that, that even if it's a shift that has made them profoundly uncomfortable, it's something that they force themselves to do. Like, that is exciting to me, and I think that is a real personal move to make, and it took a lot of guts, and that's great. That's really great.
In your painting, do you think that you've said what you wanted to say, or do you think there's a lot more to come?
I think there's a lot more to come. I think this last exhibition at Anita Rogers Gallery has done something transformative to the very basic processes of how I operate as an artist. It has made me take things that much more seriously. It felt like a real shift for me, and it has re-energized me. And not that I needed to be motivated, but it has motivated me in different ways.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my battery was dying. And I think there's a lot more to come in terms of just how I develop my voice with my paintings and my works on paper.
Great. Thank you very much for.
You're terrific. I really enjoyed it. Be well, be safe. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
I may move to Somerset. I mean, cheddar cheese and cider. Does it get better than that?
Exactly. Yeah. That's why we don't leave. Yeah. I like craftsmanship. I like a feeling of purpose and intent and physical.
You and I are very similar in that respect.
Get your hands dirty. Get down in it. You know.
Yeah.